welcome back to the Content Bite. We're a podcast for freelancers who use their words to make money. And funnily enough, we are talking all about money today. One of our favourite topics.
Definitely, it is. It is. And which is important because, I know we do lovely creative things, but, we have to eat as well, pay mortgages, all those boring things. Yeah. But maybe we should introduce ourselves first for any new listeners. If you don't know us, I'm Lynn Testoni, a writer, content creator and journalist.
Yes, and I'm Rachel Smith, a freelancer and founder of the jobs board and freelance community Rachel's List. Okay, let's get into it. We're talking about money, as we mentioned earlier. This is a topic that many freelancers have to deal with. And from the perspective of when you're working for low-paying clients or you're negotiating with a new client and being offered low or lower rates than you'd like.
Yes, because it's a really hard one, isn't it? I think we all battle this at some times. And I think that while it happens a lot more at the beginning of your freelance career and you're trying to work out how much you should charge, how long things will take, it still happens to you even once you've been doing it for decades, doesn't it? I'm sure you still find it, Rachel, and you've been freelancing for, close to 20 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think this one is a really difficult one if you're in a slow patch and if your pipeline's a bit empty and you really need the work, or if you really love working for that client and they just don't pay big bucks. I think those are the sort of situations in which low rates have you a bit over a barrel. So if you're in that situation, we understand and sympathise, and we've been there. So if that's what you're dealing with right now, we hope we'll give you a few tips and tricks, I think.
Yeah, I think also this is particularly pertinent because of the last 12 months. There's a lot more uncertainty. I think look, in Australia anyway, it's starting to settle down a little bit at this point. Like by the time this airs, it could be different. I must admit that I've agreed to jobs that I normally wouldn't have because I wasn't confident that I'd have my usual workflow coming and that usual pipeline. And particularly in parts of last year, I was just going from week to week, whereas normally I would have work lined up for a month or two and I'd have a clear idea. And that makes you a lot more confident about saying no to things or negotiating better. It puts you in a stronger position.
Absolutely. Okay, so today we want to talk about a few specific sort of scenarios. So the first one is what to do if you're offered work and told the rate is ridiculously low, which we've all been there. The second one is how to raise your rates with low-paying clients. And the third one is how to weed out low-paying clients without wasting too much time. What do you think, Lynn? Do we need anything else in there?
I think the hardest situation in all these, when we'll probably talk about in depth, is what about when you really want the work? That's harder. When it's somebody you want to work with or a prestigious company or publication, that's harder. That's when it gets complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, well, the first scenario we're going to talk about is, say you've been offered an amazing gig, but they're paying $50 for a 500-word feature, which sounds ridiculous, but oh my gosh, it happens. Or say that you are offered an amazing gig, but they're paying a really low day rate that might be half of what you normally get. But I guess we should probably say, my low might be different to someone else's low. So maybe we should talk about what we personally as senior creatives consider low. For me, it's like anything under 50 cents a word, if it's a word rate. If it's a copywriting job, I try to charge about $100 an hour. If it's content marketing, I'm in a range of $400 to $700 generally per post. What about you, Lynn?
Yeah, I think I'm in that sort of range. That'd be similar. I never do anything less than $100. And because we've talked about this a bit, but I'm in a particular niche. If it's something easy, I'd have a different perspective. If it's a topic I know I can write fast, that I don't need research, I would never do anything less than $100 an hour if it's a new topic, because I'd know I'd have to spend quite a bit of time researching. Although in saying that, I do write a very simple newsletter for a lovely small client for $50. It's pretty simple what she does, and we've got it down to a fast routine. It's really only a few paragraphs, and I probably knock it over in about 15 minutes. And if I think about it, that's a pretty $50 for 15 minutes work is a pretty good hourly rate. And the other thing, she's actually lovely to deal with. And also I send her an invoice when it's done and she pays me on receipt. And so somebody who pays you, I do work for a really big corporate and I charge a lot for them, but they have a 60-day payment cycle. So I sort of factor that into the cost. So that makes a big difference because I don't have to chase things up, and it helps my cash flow. So that is an important thing. I do agree to journalism rates because they're often set in stone. And I don't know about you, Rachel, but I do find that the more prestigious a publication, the lower their word rate. I don't know.
Are we talking about publications beginning with the letter V?
That could be. It could be, yes. I have accepted things like 50 cents a word, but I only do it if they're prestigious and they carry my byline. And that byline, I will share it widely, particularly on LinkedIn. And I do find it tends to help pick up higher paying corporate clients through that. So I consider it as a lead generation or a lead magnet.
Yeah, and you make that sacrifice on the rate just to get that clipping.
Yeah.
I agree. I've done that too. Okay, so how are we going to handle this scenario? You've been offered an amazing gig, they're paying lower rates than you'd like. For me, I am all about educating clients. And I have to do this all the time with job posters at Rachel's List. They might come along, post a job that isn't close to market rates. And although a lot of our members won't even know about this, I will whisk that job off before anyone sees it and negotiate with the job poster to bring up the rate as much as I can before I put it back up. But I think that that's something we all need to get used to doing as freelancers. We need to get used to doing this constant negotiation, becoming really comfortable with that.
It is a hard thing to do. I think it's one of the hardest things when you're a freelancer, but I do think it gets easier with time. And I think it gets easier when you start to know your worth. I guess a story from early days, somebody asked me to do some work and I quoted it. It was like a small agency. And I just said, this is my cost. And he said, I can't afford that. And of course, so he did it himself. And he's not a copywriter. And of course, the client hated it. And then he sent it to me to fix up. And of course, it ended up costing him probably more than he charged the client just to preserve his reputation. And he looked at what I'd done and he said, "Oh, I see you're really good at this." And I thought, well, that's the point. And that I am fast and I know my worth. And I think that makes a difference. And if somebody wants quality work, they have to be prepared to pay for it. But I think you have to get a level of confidence to know that what you're doing is good work. And I don't want to sound smug or arrogant, but I have been doing this for a long time. And I think, of course, if you're charging big bucks, you have to deliver too. You can't rush something off and you can't do rubbish. So that's part of it as well.
I like what you said, though. It's true. When you're charging big bucks, you have to have the confidence behind it to believe that you are worth that money and that you'll deliver. I totally agree with that. I also just want to say, I think it can feel really insulting being lowballed, especially by a company that obviously has the budget to pay market rates, which happens. It's such a shock when it happens and you think, wow, this corporate is just, charging this or paying us this or whatever. And I think you can get mad, you can rant and rave, and you'd be right to do that. But you should probably do that with your freelance mates rather than to the client. I wouldn't ever advise to get angry with the client or get aggressive in an email or try and negotiate in a sort of aggressive way. I always err on the side of being ultra polite. I really set my boundaries. I'm really firm, but I don't burn bridges because I have no idea if that content manager or editor will pop up at a higher paying magazine or digital outlet or company and remember me down the track. So my MO is always just to be super nice and say, nope, sorry. I really think you can't go wrong if you say something in the right way.
Exactly. I think you often pull it down to the word budget is always good and say, I don't think I fit your budget. I'm sorry if you've got some budget restraints. So it sort of depersonalizes.
Yes,
it's not about me.
That.
It's about the budget. And I think that's good. And I actually have had recently a client, I did a little work for a long time ago, but they pulled everything in-house to save money. This marketing manager has left the company. She's gone to another bigger company with a bigger budget and she reached out to me straight away. And I put in my normal rates and she agreed to them straight away. So she just remembered me as being at a more senior level and now she's got the budget. She can afford a senior level and I think that's good. And also the other thing, and I've said this before, I'm sure I have, but I don't negotiate on rate, but I do negotiate on scope. So I don't reduce I reduce the scope, not the rate. So if somebody comes to me and wants me to write their website and there might be, 15 pages for $500, I won't say yes to that. But I will say, I will rework your about page, your home page, and this and that for $500. And then sometimes I've had them come back when they've got budget further to do the rest of it. And sometimes once they've seen what a professional writing can do, it's back to your point about education. Then they say, oh, okay, I can see the difference now. And then they might actually either invest or find the budget. Because I think on the scope of it, writing is not the most expensive part of a business. And unless, the developers, the designers are probably being paid more than the writers. And on the scale of it's just often they get to the writing at the end and then run out of money.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I know. I've had so many of these conversations. We have a script in our scripts ebook about it. We'll actually have a discount code for anyone at the end who wants to grab that. If you want the crib notes version, I would say something like, thanks so much. I would love to work with you on, this ebook or this, feature or whatever it is. But the rate is quite a bit lower than I'd normally be paid for the same kind of work. Is there any room to move on that? And that just is a nice way of saying, can we negotiate? If there isn't room to move on that, you'll know pretty quickly. But then this is when I stand my ground. I just don't back down anymore. I understand if you're younger, you're just starting out and you do back down, and no judgment. We've all done it. But once you get to a certain level, you just can't. And so I'll just say, no worries, I understand. Thanks for thinking of me, and please do get back in touch with me if you have projects that are more aligned with my rates, as I would love to possibly work together in the future. And honestly, people do come back. Like you've just mentioned, people come back to you. I've had it happen so many times. And I think saying that, sets up a sort of a respectful dynamic with you and that person. Even if they can't afford you, it also positions you as someone of value who knows their worth and who's good at what they do. And ultimately, people want to work with that. I think that people remember that. Do you?
Yes, I agree. Because I think that if you position yourself as a bargain and your client's business grows, it will be rare that they start paying your rate and paying you more. What's more likely is they'll find a more expensive writer because they don't value you, because they see you at that bargain level rather than a quality, experienced writer. That's the way it goes.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Okay, well, let's quickly touch on options that you may have when you're working for a low-paying client already that you really love. I mean, you mentioned you have your cake lady who you do the newsletter for, but what do you do? How do you assess whether to walk away, ask for more money, or do you just keep doing what you do because you enjoy the work, or the client is lovely, they pay fast? I mean, it's a tricky one, isn't it?
I think so too. I think it's important yes, sometimes I just do small jobs for people. It might be a friend, or it might be somebody whose work I like, or a great byline or something. I only do small jobs because otherwise you get trapped in this whole circle of working for low rates, working really hard and not having time to seek out higher paying work. But if you do the odd thing, that keeps you some money coming in while you search for higher paying work, and it doesn't bog you down. For one thing, I've mentioned a while ago that I do some regular sub editing for magazines. So that doesn't pay that well, but I used to go in and do big, long, 3 or 4 month stints, but I don't do that anymore. But I do now agree to maybe doing a project for somebody, going in and doing like a week or 2 weeks, and I don't mind it, but I won't do it for a long time. Otherwise, I can't take on other high-paying roles. So I only do it with people I like and work I like, that especially work that I know I can do easily. And also over the years, I've negotiated conditions that suit me. So when I go in, I do a lot of work with Taste. I tend to start at 10 or 11 in the morning because I usually finish up some work in the morning for other I get up at 6 and I finish a blog post for a corporate client, and Taste is happy for me to go in a bit later and I work later, and that sort of suits me. And also that Taste pays my tax and my super, and I consider that's the other thing. So it ups the rate personally. Yeah.
Mhm.
So there's a few things that I will take, but I only do them for short periods of time, or maybe whip off a quick media release for a topic that I know quite well, or a client that I haven't worked with for a while. Do you do things like that?
Yeah, look, I'm pretty strategic about it. But also I will say to low paying clients, if that scope starts to creep up, they
Yeah.
suddenly want 2 interviews for a story that used to be desk-based research, or they want, more research, or they want you to like find links and go and, insert them in. There's just, those little requests. I will, basically jump on that straight away, especially if it's already a low rate to start with. But because I love a script, I'm going to give you all another script. So say that you are with that client, but you've decided to walk away. I think a really, if you don't want to get into it with them and you don't want to burn the bridge, you could just say, look, I've decided to raise my rates across the board. And you would let them know with an email saying something like, I just wanted to let you know I'm raising my rates on the 1st of July to XYZ. If you have any questions, please get in touch. Thanks so much. And, the temptation is to get in there and justify why you're worth more and justify why you're raising your rates. And I just wouldn't do that. I wouldn't be saying, I'm raising my rates because I've done this course and that course and I'm so much more valuable to you. Although you probably are, I'd just keep it very simple. I wouldn't say, I'm raising my rates to be more in line with market rates, or I'm raising my rates in line with inflation. Clients do not care. They don't give a shit, do they?
They don't.
They literally will just look at that email, decide whether or not they can afford you. They'll either say, great, you're worth it, let's move on, or they'll quibble, and then you've got another little fight on your hands. You decide whether to walk, but just keep it very simple. I'm raising my rates. End of story.
Exactly. And then it's back to depersonalizing it, because it's just about budgets. And sometimes they say, oh, we don't have the budget. And then you say, I'm really sorry that maybe we're not a good fit, something like that. And it's never about, I don't want to work for you. The other thing is, when you talk about the scope, you can say, well, this increases the scope. If you now want 2 interviews, it's going to take a bit more time. So my rate for this sort of work, unlike the work that you did, is 650 rather than 550. And then they can go, oh, okay. And then they make a choice that you go back to the easy way, or they justify, or they pay the extra money. I think that's fair. And sometimes I give people a range. Like I actually answered a rates question this morning. They're asking about blog posts, and I gave a range. So I said whatever amount I said depending on whether you want interviews or whether it's desk-based research, or how many words how deep and complex the subject is. So that, and I think then they think, oh, okay, and that gives them a scope, and then they come back with sometimes on the lower side, but sometimes they think, no, actually, I do want interviews. Okay, I understand why it's more, because there is a difference in the time.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have one last scenario that we're going to talk about today, and that's how to weed out low payers, which I think is something that can take up a lot of our time as freelancers.
Yes.
So one way, of course, is you can put your rates on your website. So somebody hits your website from Google, they see what you charge and they think no and run away, or yes, send you an email, and it's all up front. I really see the sense in doing that to some degree, and I do have a range for word rates on my site. I think I say on my website that I'm normally paid between 70 cents and $1 a word. So people know if they come to me, that's a range at which I will accept a story commission.
So you don't get those ridiculous $20 for 500 words.
Or 20 cents a word or whatever.
Yeah.
No. I also put content marketing ranges on my website because that tends to stay fairly stable. But copywriting, I don't put rates on there because I like to do that on a case-by-case basis. It just varies so wildly. Do you put rates on your site? I can't remember if you do or not.
No, I don't. I just feel I do such a variety of work. I do probably have an internal rate card, so I know what I usually charge. No, I don't. I do get a lot of people coming to me, and generally that gives you some sort of power, I guess, or control. If somebody's coming to me because they've heard of me, I've got a reference, then it's a lot easier to say this is my rate, and then they go, oh, okay.
Yep.
I do get ghosted a bit. So if somebody doesn't, they ask me my price, and occasionally they come back. If they never come back, I know it's because of the price. That's fine. I think that's business. You have to expect that. What do you think?
I think so. Look, the other thing that I did on my new website, I'm so loving my new website. So anyway, I'm going to keep
Which,
talking about it.
well, you did talk about how you were going to do it all last year, so I think you're fair to talk about that you've done it
Oh
and
my
feel
God.
good about that.
I'm so excited. If anyone wants, just shameless plug for my new website. If anyone wants to see it, it's rachelsmith.com.au. But anyway, I have a client Q&A on my site, which I didn't have on my old site. And this is for clients who want to brief me immediately, because there are clients that come, and they've got a job in mind. They just want to brief you, get a quote straight away. So it was kind of designed for that. But something I did do in that, which I'm thinking of revising, is I put, what's your budget question with radio buttons. And one of them is, I'm not sure. And it's so annoying to have that, because so many clients aren't sure. They have no idea. So they click not sure. And then you are stuck with that extra time trying to extract that information from them. Or so it's much better to have low ranges, like even under $500, right up to, 5 to 10 grand or whatever the project might run to, just so you can get a tiny bit of an idea of where their budget is. Yeah, I mean, because look
It's
at
not
what
always
happens.
obvious, is it? Because
It's
you were
not.
talking about how big corporates can sometimes come in and you think that they're going to have a big budget and then they're expecting to pay because they've been getting all their content, supplied via one of those low-paying
Tent meals.
content mills,
But remember, that happened with us. I mean, we went for a big job that we desperately wanted recently, didn't we? It was
Yes, we did.
it was a lovely, beautiful project, and I'm heartbroken that we're not working on it. But we put a lot of legwork in. Well, I did, to do a big quote, and then we had an hour-long meeting and explained our quote and everything. Still didn't get it because we never got that range. That was such a big lesson for me. How much time could have been
Because
saved.
I don't know that the clients in that case understood the scope of the work that they wanted and how much work was involved. I mean, that's why people hire writers, because they're not writers and they don't understand that to do some of these things, that was a whole sequence of work that you can't just sit down and pump out words day after day. You have to strategically plan each piece of content so they make sense and they flow from one to the other. Yeah, that's the difference between getting a professional senior level copywriter, isn't it?
But funnily enough, I saw something on the freelance marketing writer Facebook group, and it was someone was mentioning, they don't actually even enter into negotiations with clients now unless they give them a rough budget at the start.
Oh, interesting.
Because you waste so much time, don't you?
You do.
Yeah. So that's a really interesting one.
I don't do formal quotes right up front. I do a ballpark figure and saying, looking at this, my range will be between here and there. Is that in your ballpark? Is that within your budget? And if they say, oh, look, sorry, or if they say, yeah, that can be done, and then I'll get a proper scope. And so that one, I don't spend a lot of time on those emails. I just have a quick look and say, this is my ballpark figure, because that actually weeds out the really low paying ones. And even if I'm at the top end, I feel that there's potential for them to either change the scope so they can afford me, or as we talked about earlier, coming back in the future when they've got more budget. So as long as you don't spend hours quoting everyone in great detail until you've had that initial ballpark discussion. So I guess that's what having rates on the website, it does stop those sort of total tire kickers.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's all a learning process. So there's lots of trial and error. I have to admit, I'm even still learning. But yeah, I think it's really important. Educate the client about paying close to market rates, but in a really nice way. And I think that clients appreciate that information. And if you are struggling with what those are, you could direct them to the pay rates report on Rachel's list.
Yes, I was going to suggest that.
It's free, but they can download it, or you can download it and send them the PDF. And yeah, and I think that's, it's good to have something like that so you have an idea of what's acceptable out there.
Yeah, I think so too. People that undervalue good writing is often because they haven't had the experience and seen the difference. It's not just sort of a little fun little creative writing project. There's a strategy behind the words we choose and the way we structure our copy. And I think that anyone who does proper good content understands that. And any client who appreciates your work, because if they don't have respect for you, it's a red flag right at the beginning. And that they're the people that argue over your invoices, that will, send you a million lots of corrections or change the scope or the brief halfway through. So it's just a red flag. The money is just one way of defining their motives, I think.
Agree. Well, I hope that that's given you guys some strategies and some tips for next time you are negotiating with a low-paying client. But yes, that brings us to the end of the show. If you wanted to grab the pay rates report, just head to rachelslist.com.au toolkit and you'll find it in the freebies section. And we're also giving Content Bite listeners a special discount on 2 items in the toolkit this week: the 25 Scripts for Freelance Success ebook and Lynn's fantastic quoting masterclass. Yes.
Bonus.
I think that might be a really good resource for somebody who wants to kind of delve deeper into the whole quoting and feeling more comfortable about that and more confident. So
yes, I think in that masterclass, I actually took people through how I actually physically structure a quote and different ways and a proposal and everything, and talk in a lot more detail. So that's quite helpful if somebody wants the real detail, the nitty gritty. Yeah,
that's right. So if you want either of those things, we're giving 20% off either of those toolkit items with the code BYTE20.
BYTE.
BYTE20, yes, as in the content bite. We've been clever. Thanks for listening, everybody. And we will see you next week, probably with another guest star, I think.
Special guest, I think so.
Special guest.
Okay.
Thanks again.
You.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.